Okay, for FIFO, just remember that when you're transferring goods from one department to another, you're going to do first in, first out. So if you've started on something and it's sitting in work in process at the end of the period and then you pick back up the next period, well, FIFO, as far as costs are concerned, FIFO, you're gonna work on those first. And before you start working on new units, you're gonna work on those units first. And this is for cost, but you can think about the physical flow if it helps you. So the first thing that it said to do was to get your totals. So I got my total materials, and that's just the 543 and the 3,000,006. So here's my total materials cost, and then I need to get my total conversion cost. So I added those together. And then do the same thing across. So your work in process total would be your materials plus your conversions. That was what was in work in process at the beginning. And then these are the costs of materials and conversion during that were added. So just total those up. That's the first step. Then the next step is to find your equivalent units. So this is going to be a little bit different than weighted average. So to get the way that you get the way we're going to do equivalent units is we're going to think about the flow of production. You're going to start with your work in process. So think about your units here. 110, okay, 70% of that we already did in the last period. So we don't have to work on those units. The units that we have to work on would be the 30%. 100 minus 70 would be 30%. So 30% of this is what 30% of these watches, we need to do 33. So we did 77 of the watches, and we just need to do 33 or 33 equivalent units because we're 70% done. Okay, that's for beginning. For conversion, it's the same thing. You're going to do, well, of course, what you haven't completed. Since this is 50, it won't matter. 50% done, 50% we have to work on. So the units of production for this period is the 50% times your 110, say 55. Now, started and completed, the way that you're going to get that is, well, we completed 465. We know that. And they didn't give us our started and completed numbers, so we're having to figure that out. We completed 465, but the sum of this is the 110 that we're going to move out first, okay? So we really didn't complete 465. We actually said, okay, once we get that batch or that process done, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Once we get those 33 done, we're ready to move all 110 out. So once we get those done, we're going to move those 110 because they have got to go out first. So that is from beginning inventory. So we know that would be how many, so we completed this period, but 110 of them were already there. So we only started and completed 355. that's how many we started and completed. And that's the only way that I would explain it there, is take out the ones that are going to go first. We don't want those to be included in started and completed because they were already there at the beginning. And then ending work in process, here, this is the ones that we've actually completed this period. So which ones are complete? Well, in the direct materials, 65% is complete. So we're going to assign cost to 65% of that. So 160 times 0.65 would be 104. So that's where that 104 comes from. And then for the 56, we had 35% of conversion costs completed, so 160 times 0.35. So that is how you get the 56, and that is how you're going to calculate equivalent units of production. Your beginning plus what you completed and started and completed, and then what you're ending. We need to assign cost to all of these. Okay, and remember, the reason why this is here is we've assigned cost to the 70% in the ending work in process from the period before. So this 492 and this 466 is what this is right here. And it kind of shows you a little more detail as to how you count these. The 355, just remember that it's going to be your beginning, your units completed minus the ones that you have that were already started. So units started and completed is equal to the units started minus what's already been there. That's how you get the 355. So this is how you get the equivalent units. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take or get our cost per equivalent unit. So this is going to be your cost for materials, your total cost for materials. I may have that up here. Yes, so your total cost for materials is I think that's, oh, okay, yeah. Your total cost of materials, you're going to do your cost for May, just your cost for May, because that's all we're concerned about. Take your cost for May and divide by your equivalent units, and you can see materials cost per equivalent unit is 7,500. For conversion costs during the period, that's going to be the 1 million. So divide 1 million, that number here, divided by your equivalent units to get your cost. Okay, so the last part is assigning those total costs to units completed and transferred out, and use that in ending work in process. So what that means is we're trying to figure out what amount should be in ending work in process, that dollar amount, total dollar amount, and what is going to go into goods transferred out. So making sure the dollar amount is assigned correctly. So for your beginning work in process, all you're going to do is that amount was already there and has already been done. So you're just going to copy that from up here, the 543, the 96,550, and that would add up to 639,550. That was already calculated last term when we were doing this. All right, for the cost added to beginning with, well, we had 33 units that needed to be, that were in WIP that have not been completed. So we're going to do 33 times the cost per equivalent unit for direct material. The cost for equivalent unit for direct material is 7,500. If you want to write that up there, like if you want to write cost per equivalent unit 7,500, you can. And then the cost for conversion cost per unit is this. You can do that if that helps you see it. Since we calculated that already, there shouldn't be a problem with just doing that. If I was gonna, there we go. Okay, and then if you want to, all right, let's keep going. So you're gonna get those and add them. Then when you add the work in process plus the cost added to the work in process, you're going to get the total from beginning inventory. So there's your beginning WIP dollar amount. Then started and completed. Remember we calculated there was 355 units started and completed. So you would do 355 times, with H20 is 7,500. I'll just highlight 7,500. 355 times 7,500. And then here, 355 times 2,600. And if you add those two together, your conversion costs and your direct materials, that's going to give you the total dollar amount of started and completed. When you add that to beginning inventory, you started and completed this, then this is your beginning. Add those two together and get your total cost of units completed and transferred out. All right. Then you're going to have your WIP, your ending WIP. So you go back up here to see your equivalent units for materials. Let me see if I can scroll up. Just for materials, your ending WIP for materials is 104 for equivalent units and 56 for conversion cost units. So 104 times, I'm just going to show, so I can show you 7,500 here. And then over here, 104 times 2,600. And then that gives you 925.6. Let me make sure that we are on the right track here. Okay, then just add those together and to get your total cost. Now, and then add your total direct materials cost and your total conversion cost. So notice, once we get done, the 554115, those numbers, the total cost right here should be the same as the total cost up here, but what we've done is broken them down and assigned the cost correctly using FIFO. So the hardest part is probably figuring out your equivalent units, but that can be practiced and reviewed. And then doing this last part, remembering how to set this up. But I hope this helps. Let me know if you need any more help.